Hello, I'm Alex, if you don't know my name, and today we're going to be working with some MovNat ground movements. So a little bit of a focus on the crawl, the foot hand crawl, the inverted crawl, and a couple of variations of the tripod transition. I'm going to try to keep it around half an hour or so today. So feel free to pop in whenever you like and join in on whatever you're going to do. So we still got about a minute left before it's officially start time. So let's start with a few little warm-ups before we do the warm-up. So first you can sit in a kneeling position, and basically you want to have your toes tucked and sitting on your knees. If this is a hard position to get in, you can stick something under between your butt and your heels, and that'll help a little bit. So what we're going to do here is just reaching from side to side. So from one side to the other side, just going back and forth, trying to counterbalance by shifting in the other direction. So I'm bending in the opposite direction that I'm reaching. Okay, and let's actually reach out in front of us. So see how far you can reach without letting your heels come up off your butt. And once you feel your weight start to shift forward, then you can go back and reach back behind you, each side, and try reaching up. You can try rotating, so shifting to one side and then rotating around. And you can try the other side, shifting to the same side that you're rotating on. So the idea is as I'm rotating, I'm shifting my weight in the direction I'm rotating. So if I wanted to turn this into a locomotion and start moving, I would be shifting my weight to this side so that this leg is free and I can move it. And then I can continue to turn around if that's the direction I'm headed in. So you can look at these little movements and going side to side. Maybe my goal is to sit down from here. That's our transition to a sitting position. So same idea, but you want to be able to use this counterbalance to control it so that you're deciding when you're going to let yourself go, and see if you can go all the way down comfortably. Also, don't be don't be shy about using your hands for these. You can use them for a little bit of support. Try to rely on them minimally, but don't force yourself not to use them if it feels like you've got to strain in order to do it without using them. All right, so now let's actually get started for what we're doing with our class today. First, we're going to do a little bit of a warm-up before we get into some hand-foot action. So let's start with your knees bent and you're sitting on your back, and you're going to start to round your back. Try to round it as much as you can before letting yourself drop back and rock. So rock down and back up. You can hold your knees, but you can also use your arms to swing for this. So bringing them back as you go back and swinging them forward like you're throwing a ball as you come up. Holding your knees is a little more challenging because you can't use quite as much momentum. And if you really want to challenge yourself, you can hug your knees in so you can't really use any momentum. And the tighter the hug is, the harder it will be to get yourself up. Now we can try putting a little spin on this, and just as you go back, rotating so that you're changing directions as you come up. And you can go backwards. So both directions, and then coming back to your neutral position. Take a little more time with that if you would like. And now we can put our hands and feet on the ground, and we can start looking at a little bit of crawling. So this is the inverted crawl position. Hands are back, feet are forward, and all I really have to do is push up, and then I'm in an inverted crawl position. So one really simple way to move from this position is lifting the butt up, moving it to the feet. So hands next to the butt, lift up the butt, push the butt to the feet, put the butt back down, move the feet. Everybody's done this, but it's a really easy way to get that movement going and actually have your locomotion starting. When we get into the actual inverted crawl, we're moving our hand and foot at the same time, and we're using the opposite sides. But we'll focus on that a little bit later. So a couple of things that I want to get into now that we're starting to load our hands. If you have difficulty with your wrists at all, you're going to want to get a little rolled up towel, or you can even roll up the edge of your yoga mat. I have two piled up, so it's easy for me to show you. If I'm going to do a crawl, I can roll up my yoga mat halfway, and then I can put my palms on the yoga mat, and then I have the balls of my hands on the ground. So that means this angle, you don't have as much of a sharp angle, so it's the degree is less and there's less pressure on the heel of your palms. So if you're finding difficulty in your wrists, try to elevate your palms like this. You can do it with a rolled up yoga mat, or you can do it with a rolled up towel, or anything really that you can find to elevate your heels of your palms. You don't want to load that if you're feeling discomfort, because you're just going to increase misalignment in that area. But working like this and doing some of the kind of beginner variations for the crawls and some of the warm-up exercises, you can start to build that functionality in your wrists and improve the alignment and everything. So let's look at the inverted crawl as well. So you can still have this towel by your butt, and you have your heels of your palms on the towel and the balls of the hands on the ground. So you can see here, this part of my hands right at the base of the fingers is on the ground, and my heel of my palm here is elevated. So have that elevation, and then you can get rid of some of that discomfort, and you can benefit from this movement and loading your arms. So one thing you want to do here is you don't want to have your shoulders up to your ears here. The first thing we're going to do to get ourselves up off the ground is just pushing our head up pushing your ears away from your shoulders. So if I'm down like this and I push up, I should be able to extend. Imagine being a brave turtle ready to look out into the world. So lifting up, and you're loading the shoulders. So from here, you can go back and forth. And I would recommend continuing with these stationary movements and not getting too much into locomotion when you start up, if you have trouble with your wrists. So we'll come back to some of this later, but we're going to assume that everybody's wrists are all good right now. If there's most of the stuff, we're going to start in a place where everybody can do something, and then if it gets to a point where something's a little too intense, you can stay at the last stage and give that a little more time and practice. So what we're doing for the inverted crawl here is we're going to start to move a little bit. So what I want you to do is lift each foot, lift each hand, see what you have to do, how you have to shift your weight in order to lift one of your hands or one of your feet. Do you have to do anything when you lift your feet? Do you have to do anything when you lift your hand? Or can you keep everything kind of where it is? If you have to shift from side to side, what do you have to do if you lift up both limbs, so a foot and a hand? You can try lifting opposite hand, opposite foot. You can try lifting same hand, same foot. See what you have to do with the shifting of your weight in order to do each of those. So something I notice is shifting If I'm going to lift opposite arm, opposite leg, you can look at my body, and I'm kind of staying in the same place. I'm not swaying side to side very much. But if I'm trying to lift same arm and same leg, so I'm going to try to lift my right arm and right leg, I'm going to shift to the side and then lift it. I have to get my center of gravity aligned with this one line, because I'm going from having this wide base of support to having a narrow base of support. So that means if I'm going to try to start moving using ipsilateral movement, that means same hand, same foot, then I have to shift sideways and lumber side to side in order to move around. And although that's fairly effective, I can move still, I can locomote like that, I'm wasting a lot of energy rocking from side to side when I'm trying to move forward. Whereas if I am doing opposite arm, opposite leg, contralateral movement, I can pretty much stay centered. So I have opposite points of support. So I'm going kind of slightly zigzagged, but at least not boom, 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 boom. So that's the idea. Contralateral movement helps to streamline your movement forward. So we can try reaching in all kinds of directions using this contralateral movement. See, lift your leg, opposite arm, and reach your arm. Imagine you're in the middle of a clock and you want to get 3, 6, 9, and everything in between there. So imagine eight directions, sideways, other side, behind you. You can go other side directly behind you. You can reach forward with each side. That's 4 directions. You can reach diagonal towards your where your feet are pointing. You can reach diagonal backwards, and just see what you need to do to stabilize those movements. Using the leg, instead of just lifting it there when I'm reaching and then falling over, using that as a counterbalance can help when you're reaching. So you should have probably reached in every direction by now. What you can do is try doing it one more time in each direction. You can try also, we'll get off our hands for a sec. Try a couple of things that we can do when you're spending a lot of time on crawling. One thing that you're going to want to do is just kind of make sure that you're giving your hands a rest, your wrists a rest. So we're spending a lot of time here with our palms bent in this direction. So we want to spend a little time unwinding it. So taking little breaks to go back. Now, don't go into a full crawling position and then sit on your wrists like this. Stay back like you're in a kneeling position, and then gently put your fingertips down on the ground next to you, and you can roll onto the backs of your hands. But you're keeping most of your weight on your knees. So I'm not holding myself up with my hands. I won't drop if I hold my hands up. I'm not putting weight. I'm not bearing weight on my hands. I'm leaning back to increase the stretch. So if I start up a little bit, then I bring my butt towards my heels, and then I get a little bit more of a nice stretch. So you can do it like that. You can also point your fingers in different directions. You can point them out to the side, and then you're getting a little bit more of a twist as you fall back. And you can do them inwards. And you can also point them forward and rock forward to get that stretch. So I definitely recommend spending a little time breaking up your session with some stretches. You can also go back and do, after doing the opposite, you can try this one just to get the underneath of the hand, even though that's kind of what we're putting a lot of attention on. Okay, let's get back to our inverted crawl. So a couple of little points. I want to have my fingers spread. and I want to put weight evenly on my palm. So I don't want too much weight on the heel of my palm, and I don't want too much weight on just on the balls of my hands. I don't want to be popping up like this. I want to have my fingers spread, weight on my fingers, weight on my balls of my palms, and evenly distributed across the heel of the palm. So again, we can rock back and forth, and then lift one hand and foot as you rock forward. And then you can start to move with it. So find a spot where you can walk forward a little bit for a little bit of a distance, and you're gonna lift opposite arm, opposite leg. You're gonna bring your hand towards your planted foot, and then you're gonna replace it as you reach forward with the opposite foot. So what I'm basically doing is if I'm going contralateral, then my hand's free, and the closer it is to my foot, and the closer my butt is to my foot, if my butt's all the way back here, it's not going to work the same. But if my butt is close to my heel and my hand is close to my heel, then I can transfer the weight that I'm holding up with my foot to my hand and free that leg up. And as I extend that leg forward, that takes weight off of the backhand, and then I'm able to move. It's a little bit of a technical breakdown, but that's kind of the idea. So reaching forward, putting the foot down, reaching forward, putting the foot down. And remember, just think about replacing. When you're going backwards, you're replacing the hand with the foot, reaching back with the hand. When you're going forwards, you're replacing the foot with the hand and moving forward. So that's the idea there. And we can go in again in all different directions. We just did forward and backwards, but we can also go sideways. Still thinking about that contralateral movement. We can go diagonal in either direction. And we can turn around, we can rotate. I'm not going to get into too much of that, so if that's kind of getting over your head, that's no problem. If you're not used to that much crawling, you're probably sore in your wrists anyways. So let's look at the foot-hand crawl. Same principle with the hands. You want to have your fingers spread and put some weight across your palms, and don't put too much of it on the heel of your palms. So again, what we were talking about earlier, you can use a towel if you need to do this. Even if you get into some locomotion, you could have a towel here and a towel there, and then you can reach. So if I rolled up the mat here, then I would be basically here and here, or yeah, you get the idea. But you keep on moving on that and you can stack it up. But the idea is raise your heel of your palm so that you are not putting too much pressure on your wrists. But if you don't have any issues with your wrists, or if you just have a little bit of kind of soreness if you crawl on it too much, be mindful as to whether you're putting too much weight on your heel of your palm. A lot of times people basically crawl like this, and you can see that the key things is the fingers are kind of curled up, and I'm really just creating a dome and putting all the pressure on my wrist. So you don't want to put pressure on your wrist, and you don't want to put pressure only on the heel of your palm. You want to really extend it throughout your whole point of support, which is your entire hand. If you have a wider base of support around that, then you'll have more stability. So the more of your body that's in firm contact with the ground, the more stabilized you will be as you're moving through these movements. So with the foot hand crawl, we'll start with the knee hand crawl. So the only difference there is this is your typical crawl where your knees are on the ground. And we can start like this with your foot and your hand next to each other. But when we actually get into crawling movement, we want to start off with a good contralateral pattern. Because the same thing goes as for what we were explaining with the inverted crawl. If I'm going contralaterally, then I'll be pretty much triangulated forward with my movement. And if I move ipsilaterally, then you'll see a lumbering side-to-side movement, maybe a lot of hip sway. So yes, it is kind of effective in that it gets the job done. You get from point A to point B, but it wastes a lot of energy doing something that you're not even trying to do. So keep that in mind. All right, so next what we're going to get into is just starting with the reaching like we were doing before. So again, you can reach in each direction with your hand. You can lift the opposite leg and extend it in the opposite direction to counterbalance. Try getting all the directions. Think about 8 directions: forward, backwards, side to side, and the diagonals. You can do your other hand as well. If this is easy for you, just get your toe tucked under so that you're on the ball of your foot and go on your knee instead. Guarantee you it'll be a different game if you're doing that. If you're not on your knee and you're on your foot, a little tighter. So reaching is really good, especially if you have trouble with your wrist. That'll teach you how to load the weight and how to put a little bit more weight on the heel of your palm. So let's get into a little bit of the locomotion. So when we're looking at contralateral movement, if we start off in kind of a half kneeling position, so one knee is down like we were before, the other knee is up, but it's still kind of tucked. What you can do is the same hand of that foot, just have it hanging off there. That'll be the first thing to touch. The other hand will go in the front, and then you're loaded up for a good crawl pattern. From there, you just move your back, the hand that's furthest back and the foot that's furthest back. Always moving the farthest back hand and the farthest back foot if you're going forward, and the opposite if you're going backwards. So make sure you got a good feel of that contralateral pattern on your knees, and when you're ready, you can just push up through the balls of your feet so your knees come about an inch off the ground. Don't let them get too high up. You don't want to have your feet coming, your knees coming way up like this and your butt poking up in the air. You just want them to be hovering about an inch or two above the ground. So we can go in all directions, again, sideways, diagonal, both directions, diagonal. We can turn around. All those options are there. So that's our kind of forward crawl with the foot hand crawl and the knee hand crawl. Again, if you have trouble with your wrists, your knee hand crawl is going to put a little less pressure on your hands, so you can focus on building the right kind of finger spread and weight distribution in your hands. So that's the two movements that we're playing with today, and now we're going to play with a transition between them. The tripod transition is a movement that has super broad implications with a lot of different other natural movements. So anything from vaulting to crawling, climbing, different ways of getting up off the ground. There's so many things that I look at and I think, oh, yeah, the tripod transition is definitely a big player in that movement. So we're going to start and just see how it plays in movement on the ground. So basically, the tripod transition is a movement that will get us from sitting on our butts to on our knees. So we're moving from face up to face down, face up to face down. So the basic tripod transition, if we want to play with this as just an arbitrary kind of exercise, you can start in a deep knee bend. So this isn't like a squat where I'm hanging back on my heels. I'm up in a deep knee bend. I'm on the balls of my feet. My heels are touching my butt. And what I'm doing here is reaching my hand to the side. I'm going to counterbalance like we did in the warm-up at the beginning. So moving to the side, reaching out as far as I can, planting my hand down. And then I want to shift my weight so that I'm bearing some of my weight on my arm. So if my shoulder is right over my wrist, then I'm bearing some good amount of my upper body on there. And then I can feel like this leg isn't doing too much. So I can lift that leg, the middle limb, and reach it forward and reach it backwards. And I can reach my arm in the opposite direction to counterbalance so that I can reach comfortably and get used to that idea of transitioning. So you can go on the other side, start from your deep knee bend, lean your butt to the opposite direction as you reach out to the side, put your hand down, shift your weight over so that your shoulder is over your hand, and then bring your middle limb up off the ground, reach forward and back with your arm, and forward with your arm and back with your leg. And try a few times reaching. If you have a wall behind you, you can try to touch it with your foot. It's a fun kind of game, I guess. And we can come back to a deep knee bend. All right, so another way to get into this position, now we're starting to look at some get-ups. So if I'm just kind of casually sitting like this, my hand posted out to the side, pretty casual position, get up and then if I'm lifting my butt up and I'm lifting my leg up, all of a sudden I'm in a tripod transition. And then I can plant my foot and move to a getting up position. And if you're somebody who needs a little more support getting up, or you're thinking about a different way of getting up, same idea. I can bring my other hand down, lift my butt up, and then I turn around. And this is kind of like the classic old man get up. Reaching out, sitting down, still tripod transition. So tripod transition, lots of broad implications. From sitting on the ground, just lifting the butt, and you can get to your deep knee bend. Or from sitting on the ground, put your hand down. That will lift your butt. And then you're letting your leg just kind of like gravity just drop your hip. So I'm here, and as soon as I lift my hip off the ground here, you might not even be able to reach the ground at that point. You might have to lift your hip off the ground to reach, and that starts the rotation. So it's actually you're rotating yourself, winding yourself up, and then when I lift my hip, I'm unwinding all of a sudden into my crawl. So that's a bit of a transition, and we're looking at it from a perspective of getting up, but let's look at it from a perspective of transitioning. So we're going to think about our inverted crawl position. So our basic position, maybe we're butt scooting around, maybe we're actually contralateral crawling, maybe we're doing any other variation. But when we want to turn over and get face down to start crawling in a foot hand crawl, we're going to lift the opposite arm, opposite leg, just like if we were going to take a step. But instead of moving forward, I'm going to just let my hip drop under, and then I'm in a foot hand crawl. So again, I could be walking around in a foot hand crawl, and then I'll lift a foot, lift a hand, opposite foot, let the leg fall under, and then I'm in an inverted crawl again. So opposite arm, opposite leg, dropping under and reaching over. So you reach across your body with your arm, and you let your hip drop underneath, and gravity kind of takes care of the rest. So this can be a continuous movement. So opposite arm, opposite leg, reach across your body, let your hip drop under, you're in your foot hand crawl. Opposite arm, opposite leg, different one than last time. Reach your arm behind you, let your hip drop under you, and then you're in your inverted crawl. If this is a little too much for you to be holding yourself up like this, you can also do it this way with your butt on the ground. So your hands are posted back, reach over across your body. And even if you don't have difficulty with it, you're going to get a nice stretch doing this movement. Reach across your body, try to get your hand on the ground. Even if you can't get your hand on the ground, you can lift your hips up in order to move that. But you can just get your knee on the ground, and then you're in your knee hand crawl. So if I got my opposite hand, opposite leg, and this leg's just going to come in, so I can sit down, and then I'll roll back over, and then I'm in my knee hand crawl. So I'll try again in the opposite direction. So I'm sitting on the ground, just going to reach across my body, and then my leg is moving over. Place my hand next to my other hand, lift my hip, and I can just pivot on my knee there. And then same idea, if I want to go the other way around, I can reach behind myself, and I'm just going to lift that opposite knee and put it down. So put it down in front of the other leg. And that makes the space to sit down, kind of side bend sit position, and then you're back on there. So let's do a couple, whichever one you want to do with your butt on the ground or propped up like this. We're going to try to do 10 of each. So 10 from this position, 10 in each direction. So I'll count them out if you want to do it along with me. We're going to try to move slowly. So let's do opposite leg, opposite arm. So lift your opposite arm, opposite leg, and then reach across your body. And then you're in your inverted crawl. Now lift the other arm and the other leg, and then reach your arm across your body. Let your leg drop under you. And then you're on the ground there. And then again, each time you're alternating which arm you're lifting off the ground. So left arm there, and then as I go back, it's my right arm. So left arm, and then right arm. So we're going to do 2 more. Opposite arm, opposite leg, reaching across the body, letting the leg drop under you. And then again, opposite arm, opposite leg, reach behind you, let your leg drop under you. 1 more time. Across and over. Good. You can take a quick break, and we're going in the opposite direction now. So make sure you remember whether you were going to the left or to the right. So you can pop back up onto your hands and knees and lift your opposite arm, opposite leg, and drop under you. So you're going to be basically going around in a circle like this. Ultimately, we're moving slowly. We're going to move slowly, but so you're going around in a circle like that. So if you're going towards the left, this time you're going towards the right. So slowly reaching behind you. And if you're feeling like you want to do this quickly, by all means, go ahead, but make sure you're not rushing through it. Make sure you're still stepping lightly, not slamming the ground every time you go, and not letting your form get too sloppy. Okay, and then you can finish up, and let's get a little bit of a stretch back in the wrist. So hold your fingertips and the top of the back of your hands into the ground. Don't put too much weight on your hands. Make sure you're leaning back and just let it drop. Let gravity take care of most of the work. If I took my hands off the ground, I shouldn't be dropping down. I'm not putting weight, significant amount of weight on my hands. Just enough to apply some pressure. You can turn your fingertips out. Same idea with a little bit of a rotation. Then you could point your fingertips at each other. And same idea, hanging back. So 1 more with your fingertips pointing forward. And this time you're going to lean forward. But again, not putting weight on your arms. Okay, and then bringing the bottom of the hand, so bring your fingertips with the palms facing down, fingertips towards the knees. And then you're going to start in this kind of crawling position and lean back. So bring your butt towards your heels without letting your heels of your palms come off the ground. And let's do just a little bit of a cool down again in the crawling position. I'm going to do this with this. If your wrists are getting tired, do this one with them elevated a little bit. So you can have a little, actually, I'll just roll up the yoga mat. So a really good way to do this is to roll up your yoga mat, even if you don't have two of them stacked up like I do. And then you want to just get the heel of your palm, this part right here on the mat, and this part right here off the mat. So heel of the palm on the rolled up mat, ball of the palm on the ground. So this way I have less of a sharp angle on my wrist, and I can kind of get into something. So a couple of things you can do in a crawl. Think about shifting your weight. So shifting forward, shifting backwards. These are basic kind of warm-ups for your crawl. Good cool down too. But if you're building up comfort in that hand-foot position or knee-hand position, this is a really good way to start engaging that a little more. Okay, and then another thing you can do is shifting sideways. So that means my head and my butt are kind of like I'm trying to touch my ear to my hips, and the other side, my rib cage is extending in the opposite direction. So my weight is going this way, my head and my butt is counterbalancing, shifting that way. So a few times. So whatever direction your head's bending, you're shifting your weight to the opposite arm and leg. So this would be like if I was getting into and exaggerating that contralateral. And then rotation here, we can do as well. Rotation would be basically you're going to shift to the same direction to which you're rotating. And look over your shoulder. So your butt is going to the same direction your head's going, and you're shifting your weight onto that same side. So I should be able, theoretically, to lift my opposite arm and leg, same side, if I'm in that position, because I'm getting ready to move into a rotation. So that is a couple of just little things to play with. Shifting sideways, shifting forward and backwards. You can also try rounding your back and arching your back, kind of like a cat-cow, and rotating. Then you're really also thinking about really extending the spine while you're doing all of those movements and making sure that your head isn't tucked into your shoulders. You want to be a brave turtle exploring the world and getting out of your shell, not all tucked in there hiding away. So don't get all tucked in there hiding away with your head planted, necklace. Make sure that you're extending your head out when you're doing those movements and when you're doing any of this crawling. Anytime you're loading your arms, you want to have an active shoulder girdle, not a passive, letting everything kind of be manipulated shoulder girdle. Anyways, that'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in.